Yo, Sleepy Sheepy here. Today we've got a really interesting build, and that's going to be the Vyke Spear in our main hand, as well as an offhand Godslayer Greatsword. So these weapons both scale primarily with Dex, but do require some Faith allocation, so it does make sense to run these two weapons together. And I have been loving the Godslayer Greatsword as an offhand weapon. I feel like it's really interesting and solves some of the problems that you have when maining just a single Great Spear. Real quick, we'll take a look at this duel with a Runarked Host using a Colossal Sword. We're going to be able to prevent everything they want to do with these two weapons because we can space their sword if they're going to go for the full swing, or prevent it entirely with the poise break that comes with our Colossal Sword, and that allows us to flawless them. It's worth noting that the specs for this build are a little bit goofy. We are going to be running this with 20 Strength and 20 Faith, since those are requirements for the Godslayer Greatsword, and then we're going to be pouring pretty much everything else into Dexterity aside from what we need for Vigor and Endurance, and that's going to give us a little bit of a lopsided setup. We do want more Dex if possible, but we only get B scaling with both Vyke Spear and Godslayer Greatsword for Dexterity. This wouldn't be bad for a 150 build where you can really pour some extra points into Dex. We are, however, going to use the Imp Head to increase our Dex just a little bit more, and then we have the rest of this armor to just give us slightly more than 88 poise, and then we'll be running the Spear Talisman as well as the Claw Talisman, since jumping attacks are pretty strong with Vyke Spear. If you think you're going to be going for a lot of Ashes of War, I definitely recommend the Shard of Alexander, but I think these two are fairly good for base talisman choices. So next, let's talk about why I really like these weapons together. The obvious answer is that they have good scaling for Dex and Faith, where a lot of weapons don't, but the kind of nice thing about Vykes mixed with an offhand colossal weapon is going to be that you have this really nice poise breaking option whenever you want. So if you're playing against a player that's using just like, say, a great sword and they're mashing out a stun a lot, you can stop them from just hyper arming through your Vyke's attack by switching to the Godslayer sword, and that will poise break them. In a lot of those situations, that player might start running away, and then you have a great chase down weapon that has status pressure with the Madness as well. So that's a really nice benefit of that. Another point that is worth mentioning is that when you hit a player with Vyke Spear, a lot of times they'll want to punish the horizontal hitbox of Vyke Spear with a neutral jump attack, but if they go for that out of stun, you'll be able to knock them out of the air with the Godslaying Greatsword. So I would go for a lot of hits and then immediately go for the Godslayer sword, and that was a great option. Also, it's worth noting how much hyper armor you get with the Vyke Spear Ash of War, and it's just really nice as a way to zone your opponents because the floor will take up, so much space with that fire, which is just a great option to have on hand. And then if you need to, you can switch over to two-handing the Godslaying Greatsword. And the Ash of War on this is pretty bad. You don't get hyper armor, and it will do a ton of damage if it lands, but you really need to get the second or the third part to connect. That first hit doesn't really do much, and then the second or the third part will do a lot of damage if it connects, but you'll oftentimes get poise broken before you're able to get to those parts. So it's definitely worth noting that that is a bit problematic. Lastly, I want to mention that the Ravioli step is going to be a great way to chase down a player. If you go for a running light attack, then into a Ravioli step, you'll oftentimes roll catch your opponent. So those are kind of the playstyle things that I found along the way that I really liked. Also, the crouch attack is great, and if you madness your opponent, you have enough time to go for a fully charged heavy. So definitely worth noting that you can go for a fully charged R2 after the Madness proc. But yeah, that's all I've got to say. If you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, I definitely appreciate it, and let's go ahead and jump into the invasions. Alright, well, I will have an invasion that showcases a cheater. We will be starting off with a couple appetizer invasions. So this one is going to take place in the Deep Root Depths, and you'll notice that we are standing on water, which is something we should be at least cognizant of if we're running something that does fire damage, because our opponent's resistances to fire is going to be stronger. So we are going to try to get the Madness proc on this player pretty early. We went for a Madness incantation right off the bat, and then went for a couple hits with Vyke Spear, and now we're going to move into an area that's not on water. So that's going to be a little bit more helpful for trying to eliminate this opponent with the red lightning attacks. But we do need to back off as everyone has started crowding around me, and we are going to run back into an area with water, which is, most of this level. So it's just something to be cognizant of. We are going to swap over to the Stormhawk Axe, try to hide in these bushes a little bit, see if we can get some damage off pretty early on. We don't want the Stormhawk Axe to obliterate everybody at once, but if we do get a little bit of damage in, it's not a bad thing. So we are going to be switching away and back over to Vyke Spear with offhand God-slaying Greatsword, and here we do manage to hit this Phantom once with our crouching attack, and then roll before the second swing of the Gavel of Hyema, and then we are actually able to get the Madness proc on the other Phantom as well, and finish them off while they're in the animation. And then we also get the Madness proc on the host pretty quickly, and finish off that 3v1 without too much difficulty. So if you are able to get those Madness procs, it is going to be huge. Obviously, it's not as busted to be using this as compared to something like Power Stance Vykes, but I do think the single weapon pressure is even quite strong, and I found it to be extremely useful in invasions. Next up we have another 3v1, and we've kind of isolated this Phantom. We're going to go for a Ravioli step to get the roll catch, and that's going to be enough to get them into one-shot range, and then we'll just go for a crouching attack, which is also very good for roll catching, especially if you are worried about them rolling to either side of you. Oftentimes they're expecting you to come out with a poke, you come out with a sweep, and it works out in your favor. So this next player is running the parry shield, so we immediately go for a jumping attack on them and then swap over to our Colossal Sword, which cannot be parried. So just being cognizant of that as well is important. When shields are in the mix, there's always a chance that they'll go for a parry, so if you can switch over to a whip or a Colossal Sword or a flail, you'll be in business. And then we're able to dodge their Sacred Blade and then go for just a crouching attack with Vyke Spear to finish them off. So again, a pretty successful 3v1 where we're able to really utilize kind of the variety of this build and make use of both the Colossal Sword as well as Vyke Spear. Next up we have this invasion where we very quickly go for our Ash of War, and we can see that we hyper armor through the Colossal Sword swing, so that's something to be aware of. If you have, you know, a decent amount of status pressure on your opponent and you want to go for something that's just kind of like a win button and you can't stop me type move, Vyke Spear's Ash of War is going to be a strong option. You can obviously get backstabbed after the end of it, but if you free aim it, which I strongly recommend, you'll usually be in business to deliver a lot of damage or successfully zone your opponents just with all the madness fire that ends up on the floor. So here we don't go for the fully charged R2. Had we, I think we would have defeated that player, but a blue does come into the world and make things a little bit more interesting in what started out as a 2v1. So it does become a 2v1 again. We're trying to get some additional status pressure with the frost pots. Those can be a great ranged option for this type of build because your attacks with Vyke Spear or the Godslaying Greatsword are both going to undo the frost damage, and so that you can frostbite them over and over and over again, which is a decent amount of damage for a projectile, usually in the realm of 200 damage. So not bad to continuously do that, and your subsequent hit will be doing a little bit more damage even if the status effect goes away with each swing. So we back off a little bit and we throw just one sleep pot, and it ends up being huge. We manage to hit the blue right before they get slept, and then once they're in the sleep animation they get hit again with the Godslaying Greatsword. So just kind of a massive choice to go for the sleep pot in that moment, and it ends up being decisive against that blue and allows us to get some damage in on the host. Now they're going for Lion's Claw, which is very easy to backstab. It's not as easy as it once was, but it's still not too bad. And here we actually go for our Ash of War with the Godslaying Greatsword and do manage to connect it. And you can see some of the black flame power where it does, you know, continue to chip at our opponent. So they are able to heal and hit us with a frost pot. So we need to back off a little bit. We want to get rid of the frost and just make sure that we're topped off on health. We toss a sleep pot, but it's way too short. So again, we start backing off a little bit and we switch over to our two-handed Colossal Sword because we see so many either great weapons or colossal weapons in the mix, and we'd really like to be getting these poise breaks. So having that option on hand is so nice, especially for the Colossal Sword that swings the fastest. Now our opponent here has switched over to Moonveil away from the Moonlight Greatsword, which you know, both are very strong options and you need to be wary of, but the hyper armor is quite powerful with the Godslaying Greatsword, and we can hyper armor trade with them and defeat the blue. And at this point PvE has gotten into the mix, and this PvE is quite strong, so we're, you know, not too worried at this point. It's just a 1-on-1 or a 2-on-1 if you include the PvE on my side, and we go for one of the Queen's Black Flame Ash of War, but you know, they were totally out of range. It was kind of just hoping and seeing what would happen. Here, they're actually below the hitbox of Vyke's spear and dodge the incoming running light attack, which is kind of neat. Sometimes, you know, weird hitboxes can work out like that, but we are eventually able to get them with just another light attack with some help from the PvE. Now, moving on, we're going to have an invasion with a cheater. So if you know my channel, you know that I do enjoy cheaters. The way they play is always insanely reckless. Well, I guess it's not insanely reckless. It's just, you know, they have... they play very aggressively because they're cheating. So this player does not take any damage, which is problematic as an invader. And when, you know, we're gonna see what we can do. So we'll back off a lot. We'll probably be trying to get some stuns on them and mostly not get bled by their power stance spears. So we're gonna bring them into an area with PvE and try to bring them close to a ledge. Gravity is one of your best tools against cheaters because, you know, even if it doesn't kill them, it at least puts them out of the picture. So we're just stunning them over and over again, not doing any damage, and bringing them out towards this ledge. And then here, the hero of the invasion, this Cleanrot Knight, grabs them with their spear and chucks them down the ledge, and now it's a 2v1. So I absolutely love that moment. Shout out to cheaters who make things more interesting and play poorly. And then we have this 2v1 with player with Moonveil. We're going to be going for pokes with our Colossal Sword and then swapping over to Vyke's Spear. And again, this Cleanrot Knight just putting in work and helping us out. Turns into just a one-on-one with the host. Now, I'm not entirely sure if the cheater died from that fall, but they do have a long way to go if they want to, you know, kind of get back in the action. So we're trying to make this as quick as possible with the host. We're able to grab just a jumping light attack, and here they make the smart play and do try to head towards the exit rather than running back around the inside of that room. We do miss with our jumping attack, but we're going to keep trying, and then they go for Stormcaller, which is a fantastic turn and burn option. We back off and heal. We want to, you know, not be in one-shot range if they go for Stormcaller again, but we do want to continue the pressure, especially knowing that the cheater might still be out there. So we do get the Madness proc, and then we get some help from some of the PvE and finish off that invasion. So always a gem to encounter players like that, and we can move on to our next 3v1. So these players were definitely ganking. They weren't super optimized, but they did have setups that you need to be weary of, and you know, they can deliver a lot of damage. So here we can see the attempt to attack out of stun from the first Phantom, and we're able to just, you know, completely negate anything they want to do with our offhand Colossal. However, we do get hit with Sacred Blade from far away from the host, and that's going to be a reoccurring theme of this particular invasion, where Sacred Blade is something that's like kind of quiet enough where it's hard to roll just based on the sound, and you know, if you're focusing on two other players, getting hit with Sacred Blade from far away from the third can be something that happens a lot. You know, at least it happened a lot to me in this invasion. So we're trying to, you know, just deliver gradual chip damage on both these Phantoms, trying to save the host for last. Again, this is kind of the stubborn approach that I have in a lot of invasions that can sometimes be problematic, but it's the way that I enjoy playing. So, you know, it's just a way to play, and if you want to go for the host more often, that's probably the correct thing to do. So here we back off a little bit more, and we really like these giant swords that are sticking out of the ground because they can help block some of the projectiles. So we'll be trying to stay in that general area and just kind of weave around them. We also go for Vyke's Ash of War to deliver some madness, especially on a player that isn't running super heavy armor. We can expect that they might get madness a little bit more quickly than some of the other players, although if they are over leveled, that will be a little bit more difficult. So we go for a jumping attack while trying to dodge everything else around us. We miss the first one but get the second one and turn this into a 2v2. And this player here that's running the power stance greatswords is very dangerous in the amount of damage they can deliver, and they do have Bloodhound Step, and I didn't realize until a little bit later, but they were fat rolling, so that's kind of the reason for the Bloodhound Step, but it still, you know, does make things difficult. And here we get hit with Sacred Blade and then just get hit by a ton of the power stance katana attacks, so something to be aware of, and we're able to use the hyper armor with our Colossal offhand to just tank the attack with the katana as well as the Sacred Blade attack from the host, and finally we get to chase them down. Once it's a one-on-one, it's over pretty quickly, and we're able to finish off that 3v1 with some a little bit annoying Ashes of War. So moving on to our next one, again we're going to have a 3v1 in Farum Azula this time, and we need to look out for some of the Ashes of War from these players, especially Waves of Darkness that can do a lot of damage and catch you for a very long stun. And we do end up getting hit by these clubs and start rolling away from, again, Sacred Blade, kind of my nemesis for this showcase. Now, we don't get caught by their Ash of War, and they actually hit the wall, so I don't think it completed, but it would have been a little bit sketchy to kind of stay in that area and not see what happens. So here we go for running heavy, which I don't really recommend with Vyke Spear too often, especially in duels, but occasionally it can be the right choice if you're going for a player in an invasion that is rolling backwards over and over again. Sometimes you can catch them for multiple hits and deliver a lot of status pressure. So just something to be aware of. Generally not the right play, but you will see me going for the running heavy occasionally. And here we get the player with Hand of Melania. We've drawn them into an area with quite a bit of PvE, and we can use the hyper armor associated with Vyke Spear to grab that status proc on the Phantom. We get hit with Sacred Blade right before we're able to finish them off, which was just a bummer. The kind of, you know, the poise breaks that you get with Sacred Blade when you just stand back and send that Ash of War towards an invader are very powerful, even if the damage isn't monumental. It really breaks up the rhythm of the fight and can, you know, kind of save your teammate. So gankers, if you're watching this, I'd prefer if you didn't use Sacred Blade, but it's probably a good option if you're just gonna stand back and use it as the host. But we are able to successfully finish off that group of 3, and we move on to our next one. So this is going to be another group of 3 in the sewers below Lanedale, and we weren't really sure where they were. It took us a while to find them, so when we finally did, we started to apply our buffs, and we start to go after them. We're in such a small space that we're really going to be wanting to make sure we get some poise breaks. We don't want our opponents to be able to poise through things. Here we go for a little bit of an early Hail Mary with our Ash of War, and you can see how quickly we get stunned out from that, and we are able to actually finish off the Wizard Phantom there. So that was definitely a nice kind of get in, get out moment, and it takes us a little while, but eventually we do catch up with the host and the Phantom. The Phantom is using the Stormhawk Axe. I thought that I had Frost proc them there, but they were still going for their Ash of War, so we jump right into it. Not the best move, but they aren't able to heal. The PvE is still a little bit problematic for them. Here we're just going for our Ash of War to see what happens. That's kind of my approach with the Godslayer Greatsword, is to, you know, if there's a dull moment and you want to just pull out that Ash of War, occasionally you'll be able to get it to be successful, but it's really not as powerful as something like the Vyke Spear Ash of War, which has lots of hyper armor. So we're able to successfully defeat the host there as well, and we can move on to our next one. So this one I was particularly happy about. This duo wasn't too much of a challenge here. We do get some of the, you know, nice poise breaks that are associated with our Colossal Sword. We quickly chase down the Phantom. In the process, we get hit with Blasphemous Blade, but here we will be going for the Ash of War on our Colossal Sword, and you know, it just felt nice to actually land it. So we get the first hit, and then we go for the follow-up, and that does, you know, pretty much one-shot the host. So it is nice to be able to land that occasionally. Obviously, it helps if your opponent's fat rolling. It's really not the most useful one, but to kind of make the showcase more well-rounded, I thought I would include that. So next up we have another 3v1, and we switch over to the Great Bow thinking we're going to go for our Ash of War on that, but the blue decides to be aggressive in that moment, so we back off. We need to heal our blood loss, and you will note that this blue is going for their Ash of War Bloody Slash, which can do quite a bit of damage, but will also take a bit of HP away from the blue in the process. So here we get them into one-shot range, but we get hit with just a ton of different things simultaneously. We have a host running Vari's Bouquet, which does a lot of bleed build-up, but here we can see the blue going for their Ash of War with only 92 HP left, and just kind of ending their life. So An unfortunate moment for the blue, and that turns us into a 1v1. We've moved into an area with a bit of PvE, and that helps us defeat this other phantom, and now we're back to a one-on-one with the host. It takes a little while for us to catch up to them. We do go for running heavy. Again, this was a situation where they're really just moving in one direction, so our likelihood of getting backstabbed was pretty low, and they were, you know, not such a threat when it comes to using that particular attack. And here we're able to just kind of use the crouching attack a couple times, get a phantom hit, and then finish them off with a running heavy. And all those do connect within the span of the Madness proc, so potential option there if you've already got that kind of queued up. Now, this next invasion was not one of my best. I would say it was overall pretty poorly executed. Things start out pretty well at the beginning here. We've lost some HP, but there's going to be a phantom that just does so much damage throughout the course of this invasion, and really, like, there's no reason that I didn't play this better, but I wanted to include it just because it was a nice demonstration of what to do when you're out of heals, and just like an ability to kind of adapt my playstyle to kind of meet the needs of the invasion. So very quickly we're able to defeat one phantom, but we still had two more phantoms, and there's a bit of a latency issue, which I'll lean on as a bit of an excuse for why this didn't go well. But this player with the Colossal Sword was able to just kind of utilize their jumping attacks very effectively, and really, like, repeatedly I was not expecting the range that they would have. And there was a couple times when I thought this was patch 1.09 and was expecting to poise break them. So just a number of issues, and that's going to really start coming to light as I come up the stairs. So that hit, I was a little surprised that connected. Really, I should have just been rolling everything. And here the real problem starts to come into play when I start healing and get punished for it almost every single time. So there was one jumping attack, there was a poise break that I was hoping for that I didn't get to connect, so I switched to a Colossal Sword. But I've still lost a lot of health from this player. Here again, I go for a very poorly timed heal. I needed to give myself more space. I'm just, burning through Estus at a very problematic rate. That was a hit that I was a little bit surprised connected, but again, taking a lot of damage. And here I get hit with Giant Hunt from the host that has now come into the mix, and I am officially out of heals. So you'll see by my HP bar that things are not looking great. Here I go for an Estus cancel, not realizing that I am out of Estus. Had I not gone for the Estus cancel, I definitely would have died in that moment. So just kind of shout out to Estus cancels and using them in opportune moments. I try to space a little bit with some of the Vyke's Ash of War, and then here I go for Uplifting Aromatic. So this will give me another hit probably, where if I can get hit in this instance, I probably won't die, like, regardless of what it is, just because I've got that aromatic on. So that allows me to be just a little bit more aggressive, but still I'm 2 hits from death and need to play this kind of cautiously. Obviously I could go up an elevator and use Holy Ground or something. It's not, totally over, but I was kind of interested in just seeing how the rest of this invasion would go if I didn't finish it off, and I'd already played poorly that I wasn't sure that I'd be putting it in the showcase, but again, I just felt that it was a semi-useful example. So now I'm playing a lot more cautiously with this player. I'm spacing, with quite a bit of range. I'm not getting too aggressive, and I have talismans that boost my damage when my HP is low, so the feather talismans are very helpful in that moment, and we're actually able to finish off that phantom as their host completely abandoned them. So that was really nice. I am gonna, use everything I can to get the most HP out of my last flask, and now it's just a one-on-one with the host. I'm confident that they have probably at least 5 heals, so really we need to keep up the pressure without being without getting hit too many times. So we're in a pretty good spot pretty early on. That attack that I did there was a crouch into my offhand attack, and that can be kind of a nice mix-up, I think, because they're expecting you to go for a crouch attack with Vyke Spear, but the timing is a little bit different with your offhand. So they are going for a running heavy with the Twin Blade, which is very dangerous, but we do have the status pressure, and we can see that being kind of the deal breaker here for that host. We get that Madness proc, and that allows us to get all the damage we need to win that invasion with very little health. This last invasion, just a quick PSA about Endure. You should keep Endure. as a very quick swap for moments like these, it can be very helpful and allows you to win an invasion where things are quite problematic. So that's going to conclude the invasion portion of the showcase, and we'll move on to the duels here. My first opponent here is going to be running a two-handed katana, so not even the Nagakiba, which is kind of surprising to see, but they are going to have the spinning slash Ash of War, so we'll need to be wary of that. And we're mostly going for some backsteps. I wanted to incorporate backsteps just a little bit more with this setup. I felt like the ravioli step was very strong, and just using it to space in a way that I don't normally go for can be kind of fun. So here we can see those backsteps just being semi-useful in terms of changing our positioning. With ravioli steps, you definitely need to be aware of the potential to get backstabbed, but we do get an early madness proc and finish that off with This next player is also going to be running a two-handed katana, but they will be using the Nagakiba, so they're going to have a lot more range, and we're going to need to look out for that. They are going to go for Exalted Flesh very early, so we'll use some Boiled Crab to just kind of negate some of the extra damage they'll be doing with their Nagakiba, and we'll be trying to delay our hits a little bit, not go for anything too quickly, and here we can see how useful both the offhand Godslaying Greatsword is as an anti-air, as well as the usefulness of the ravioli step when it comes to a roll catch. And again, we're able to defeat our opponent very, very quickly and use the status pressure of Madness to come out with the victory. Next up, we have a player that's running a Bloody Helix with an offhand whip, although they didn't really use the whip at all, so that might have been a nice way to mix things up a little bit. They're going for their Ash of War a lot, and that leaves them open for a backstab, so we're able to roll in and grab that just with some nice positioning and some well-timed rolls. We know that we've done some status pressure with the Madness Spear, so we go for our Ash of War as they're running away with the hopes of just getting a little bit more Madness buildup. And here we delay a light attack and then ravioli step into their Ash of War and manage to catch them for the last bit of HP. So again, just a nice duel here. Next up we have Steelovsky 2.0. So I didn't know that Steel was on PlayStation. It's great to see him in the arena though. Surprised he's not fully golden when it comes to his emblem, but that's all right. He's running a nice strong setup here with Flaming Strike on a halberd with an off dagger, so definitely kind of scary. We're going to go for some delayed light attacks, use our Godslaying Greatsword as an anti-air, get a jumping attack, and then finish off Steel with a nice Ash of War. So GG Steel, definitely you. I'm so happy to see you with a PS5 now. Now this next player is going to be running Power Stance Sword Spears, which is a setup that I actually like a lot. I think kind of the biggest mistake you can use when running it is using the Power Stance moveset too much. It's not great, but if it comes out in certain moments, it can be really strong. Like the jumping attack and the crouching attack are both great. The running L1 is not too good in my opinion, although it did manage to catch me in this invasion. And this player does go for a Madness Ballast, which is absolutely a good play, but they get punished for it a little bit. And here I did not mean to go for kind of a backwards jump, but we are able to pressure a little bit with the spear, wait, and then catch them with an offhand Godslaying Greatsword attack. And then here we aren't expecting to really hit them with the Ash of War, but we would like to lay down that area of fire, and that's going to be enough to finish off that opponent. Next up we have a player again running a two-handed katana, so not sure what was going on with the two-handed katanas these days, but it was kind of fun to see. Here we can use the hyper armor with the Godslaying Greatsword to get that to connect even though we get hit. We roll in for a nice backstab and then switch over to our Ash of War. I don't really know what happened. Things got a little bit weird with the placement of our opponent, but we do manage to successfully win a duel with the Godslaying Greatsword Ash of War. And next up we have an opponent using Power Stance Curved Swords, which is a fairly strong setup. The amount of damage you can do in a short period of time is quite high, and they're doing a good job of, you know, spacing well and not getting too aggressive. So we're obviously going to be looking out for the running L1. That's just kind of the bread and butter when it comes to a setup like this. We do manage to hyper armor trade with it, but eat a lot of damage in the process, so not ideal, but you know, we're still at least a little bit ahead on health, so we'll just kind of be a little bit more patient here and look out for that again and maybe not go for so many trades. We're also just cognizant of the amount of status pressure we can do along the way, and here they go for 4 attacks in a row. I was really only expecting 3. We do manage to get one more hit with the Godslaying Greatsword, and we're getting at least phantom procs with the Madness Spear. playing a little bit more patiently, and now we're within one-shot range, especially with their running L1, so we need to be a little bit more safe. And here we go for some really nice spacing with Vyke Spear, where you can actually turn around and have some backwards momentum and then change it almost 180 degrees and get some forward momentum. Next up, our opponent is going to be running a Colossal Sword, and we've played them before, so we've applied the Hammer Talisman, knowing they like to go for guards. And here we get the guard break with our Jumping Heavy, but actually use Flame Grant Me Strength, forgetting that we don't have our Soft Swap equipped for the Misericord. So just kind of a funny moment there, but we're going to continue to apply pressure both with Jumping Heavies and just the Madness build-up that comes with Vyke Spear. And we roll a couple times, not sure if they're going to go for a heavy or a poke, and we do manage to land another jumping attack, use the Godslayer Greatsword to finish them off, and that offhand option is just so strong. Next up, we have a player that's running a Greatsword, and so here it's going to be not a bad idea to use the Hyper Armor that comes with our Colossal Sword offhand to just kind of knock them out of their attacks. So here we get a nice backstab as they go for Sword Dance, which the timing is kind of tight, but you definitely can't get it. We go for a free-aimed Vyke Spear, Ash of War, get a decent amount of damage, and then here we're able to get the Madness proc just with a crouching attack. So a nice 1v1 with this player running a pretty strong setup. And next we have somebody wearing the Mushroom Crown, which I always like to see, and we'll just kind of take a moment to appreciate how useful the Godslayer Greatsword is as an anti-air, and especially for somebody that likes to neutral jump against a spear, this is going to be perfect. So here we go for a Jumping Heavy and manage to get it to connect, and we get the anti-air with the Colossal Sword. So really nice stuff there, and the continuous hits with Vyke Spear are going to be enough to get the Madness proc as well. That's going to be everything I've got for you today. If you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, definitely appreciate it, and I hope you have a great one.